Hello everyone. Alright, we are about to begin. My name is Daniel and welcome to tonight's event. Thank you very much for coming out and supporting your local bookstore, The Tattered Cover. April has been a great month for events. Next Tuesday the 19th we have Douglas Brinkley here to present his book Rightful Heritage, and the 27th is John Kradowski here to present Sleeping on the Summits. For more on our upcoming events, you can grab one of our event calendars located on top of the author's books for the evening, that shelf over there. For tonight's event, we have Gary's publisher, Mark Stevens, here to present the late and great author, Gary Reilly's posthumous release, The Detachment, which is the sequel to the Enlisted Men's Club, part of the Private Palmer trilogy. You may or may not know Reilly from his enormously well-received Asphalt Warrior publications, but he has left a strong presence in many readers' hearts. We're very glad to have someone here on his behalf, so if everyone could please help me in welcoming Mark Stevens.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for coming out on kind of an iffy night. Iffy, but not too bad yet, right? Great to see everybody. First of all, I really want to thank Mike Keefe, who is not here. My partner in publishing. Mike is on an outing, month-long outing in Mexico with his wife. And I know he's enjoying it wherever he is, but I know he wishes he could be in two places tonight because this project means so much to us. Hello, Mike, wherever you are. I hope you're knocking back a nice margarita at this point or something. So, thanks also to the Tattered Cover as always. This is where we do this. They're amazing. They're so cooperative and so helpful at every step of the way. And there was a little wrinkle in this particular title, won't go into details, but again, they were extremely helpful. And it's great to see all family and friends who came out tonight, so thanks for making the effort. Tonight I'm going to do a few things, just to give you an idea how it's going to work. I want to talk a little bit about how this, which is Gary's actual bound copy of The Detachment, how he used to bind them, how this became this. I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of the fun meat and potatoes of how that all worked. I want to talk a little bit more about Gary's growing network of fans and supporters out there. And I also want to talk a little bit about the editing process that went into this. And interestingly enough, how the editing, reach out and just finding people to help with the editing side actually connected over to the fan side. And it's just a kind of a cool little story, I think. Then I'm going to read a little bit from The Detachment for about 5 minutes or so. And then our good friend Dennis Bergfeld, who did an amazing job when we launched the first book in this series, The Enlisted Men's Club. We found a great voice for Private Palmer, as we had already found a great voice for Murph, the man in the back corner over there, Dennis Gallagher, who's the voice of Murph, and now we have the voice of Private Palmer. So that's basically going to be it. Take some questions, sign some books, and hopefully get you home to your fireside and a brandy before too long. So first, I think it's important to note, and I want to start with the fun side, with the Asphalt Warrior side. It's kind of ironic that we're here on April 15th. If you know Murph and have paid attention to Murph and how much Murph loves not the IRS. Now, for those who don't know, there's really, so far to what we've published of Gary's works, he left behind approximately 25 novels. 10 or 11 of those were in the Asphalt Warrior series, and for those who don't know, they're a very funny series about a cab driver based on Gary. It's Gary's alter ego, Brendan Murphy, aka Murph, who's got two goals in life. One is to earn as little money as possible to keep his very simple lifestyle afloat. The other is to never get involved in the lives of his passengers. And of course, he's endlessly getting tangled up in the lives of his passengers. So if you don't know the whole story, there's the Murph side, and then there's all the other fiction that Gary wrote that's mostly, and it is very, very, serious, good, high-quality literature, I believe. But I want to start with the Asphalt Warrior side because of April 15th. And I just pulled a few of Murphisms from 3 of the books talking about tax day. Of course, I went to look it up today, and why didn't I hear from my tax guy today? And I just found out today that the deadline is actually Monday, the 18th. Everybody else here knew that, but nobody bothered to call and tell me. So I was like, where's my tax guy? Oh, it's Monday. So anyway, it's April 15th in general. From Asphalt Warrior, Murph says, taking calls off the radio is how a real cab driver makes money. He doesn't sit in front of hotels and he doesn't sit out at the airport. He takes radio calls one right after the other. The fact that I'm a real cab driver does not invalidate the hypothesis. I know I'm a real cab driver because I have a license. I do sit in front of hotels, but I never sit out at the airport. On the surface, this might indicate that I am only half a real cab driver or else half a phony. Take your pick. All I know is that every April 15th I write taxi driver on my 1040 and not phony. From the Heart of Darkness Club, and there's a little bit of lingo here. An L2 is when your taxi headquarters is calling you back to the station. The L2 says you got to come back, right, Mike? Yeah. Heart of Darkness Club. I've been L2'd quite a few times in my career, but I don't want to get into them because they are all long stories with disastrous endings. I wasn't worried though. I thought it might have something to do with the cab I was driving, like maybe the PUC had condemned it. Or maybe the IRS was after me for never lying about my income tax form. One of the sweetest feelings in the world is reporting all my tips on April 15th. It makes me feel like a demigod, invulnerable, invincible, and completely deluded, which is the best feeling of all. And from Dark Night of the Soul, little known fact, at least it was little known to me until I read it in a newspaper article. Pennies are not legal tender in America. This is why people who try to pay their federal income taxes with jars of pennies are told by IRS agents to go home and bring back real money. That was in the article I read. The perpetrator was an anti-tax fanatic. I felt bad for him. I always feel bad for optimists. I figure the founding fathers had anticipated optimism and wrote a law excluding the one-cent piece as legal tender. You know a man has hit rock bottom when he devises a scheme to get the government's goat. Believe me, that goat is ungettable. So that's Murph on tax day, and there are many, many more references to the IRS throughout that. Very quickly, before we leave Murph, some wonderful things have happened since we last launched the 7th book in the series, Pick Up at Union Station. That came out last summer. And first of all, Pick Up at Union Station is now a finalist for the Colorado Book Award in literary fiction, which is phenomenal to me. This is his 3rd nomination out of the 8 books we've published so far, with the 9th coming up. So we'll find out May 21st if possibly Gary wins a Colorado Book Award, which would be fabulous, of course. And we also had another tremendous review on National Public Radio last December by our now friend, a London cab driving book reviewer for Scott Simon on Saturday mornings on NPR. And Scott Simon raved about Pick Up at Union Station, called it a rattling good yarn, and again praised the whole series. So that was fabulous. And then Booklist. Booklist is the American Library Association's pre-publication review journal. They are read by libraries across the country, highly renowned. I just went to the Public Library Association conference here in Denver last week. Booklist is taking meetings. They got a big booth. They're right up there with Kirkus and Library Journal and all these pre-publication places. But Booklist is known for taking, really, they'll look at any book you send them, including from small independent book publishers like Running Meter Press. They don't just look at the Simon Schusters. They will open every single package. The numbers are off the chart in terms of what they'll review. It's staggeringly small how many actual get reviewed, but Booklist chimed in on the Asphalt Warrior. Actually did a great interview online with me and Mike as well. But the last 4 paragraphs of the Asphalt Warrior review, I think, really nailed it. And I just want to read this. And I can tell you the sales have been terrific since this review and the NPR thing happened. They've just hit another level. I mean, we're not setting any records. The New York Times hasn't called, but we're starting to get some nice little traction going. And you just see the spikes kind of just go through. So anyway, here's what Keir Graff said. While the plot of the Asphalt Warrior suggests a mystery, it's really as thin as a taxi receipt. I agree with him. The first one is kind of a thin plot. The plots get a little bit more juicy as the books go along. What makes this book worthwhile is the voice and that rare feeling of encountering a truly original fictional creation, whose narrative voice is imbued with the author's own personality and idiosyncratic worldview. Like Ignatius J. Reilly, different Reilly, in John Kennedy Toole's A Confederacy of Dunces, another book not published during its author's lifetime, Murph is in a society but not of it, and works a routine service job for customers who have no idea of his rich interior life. Unlike Reilly, Ignatius Reilly, whose pomp and bluster create chaos, Murph is a go-with-the-flow philosopher. Comparisons to the dude in The Big Lebowski seem somewhat inevitable.
Yeah.
A man who wants to avoid people and will do almost anything to avoid confrontation, but whose internal monologue makes him a fascinating companion. Every few pages, readers will find an unexpected turn of phrase, a running gag, or, for lack of a better way to put it, a funny way of looking at things. When someone you know makes it, you're happy for him, even though you're jealous, muses Murph. His success means there's still hope. It's a shame that hope hinges on success. Why can't hope hinge on failure? Think how successful everybody would be. Murph finds himself entangled in his passenger's domestic drama because, despite his intentions, he has a big heart that ultimately renders his non-engagement policy useless. As readers, we're lured on by the thinnest of authorial pretenses simply because, with Murph at the wheel, we don't want to get out of the cab. So that was a knockout thing that happened from Booklist, and it just, I get chills reading it now. I just love that insight. So leaving Asphalt Warrior and switching over to why we're here tonight, I just want to talk a little bit about, hope you're not too, this is maybe publishing nerdland or the equivalent of, but so Mike and I have always known that when the Enlisted Men's Club came out, we knew that there was a lot more Vietnam fiction to come. I had always read, and Gary had always pushed on me and wanted me to read several versions of a book he called The Traffic Man of the PMO, which was this. Now Gary he came up with this incredible way of printing these books on a computer, front and back, even pages on one batch, and then you turn it over and print the odd sides, and sit there with an X-Acto blade or something and cut them out, bind them with rubber cement, and put them together like this. So you could read them like a paperback. And I'd always read this, and I just absolutely loved it. And then I read another section, which was the first section of this. Well, Mike and I are trying to figure out what's going to be next, how this is going to work. We're looking for files. We're working with Sherry, digging up files. And one day I meet Mike for coffee, and Mike puts this exact book on the table between us. I said, "What's this?" He said, "I just found this." And what blew us away was I recognized the middle section, I recognized the beginning, but the last section I'd never read before. And I thought I'd read everything Gary had written, which is a lot. And I instantly recognized that it was language I didn't know, and it was beautiful. I read this in about a week. It's 500 and some pages in print. It's big read. But I was just blown away. Well, we couldn't find the file. Could not find the electronic copy of the file. So the first thing that happened was my daughter Justine spent days and days scanning those pages in and uploading them to make an electronic copy out of these exact pages, scanning them in, tearing it apart, and putting this back together, which was quite the effort. We finally had an electronic version together, but lots of editing to go. Gary's stuff was clean, very, very clean. He worked on it, as hard as any writer I know. He really believed in polishing, and he did. But there's always editing. So the first part of the editing story starts with an email I got out of the blue, and I think it's also shows the growing legion of Gary's fans that are out there and where his stuff has reached, which kind of blows me away. So just follow along here. I got this email out of the blue last summer. Hello, and it was to Running Meter Press. Just wondering when the second book in the Enlisted Men's Club trilogy will be published. I'm a huge Gary Reilly fan, and I've read everything of his that you've published so far. Thanks for getting his work in print. Kindest regards, Karen. Mike wrote back a very straightforward email. Good job, Mike. The next book in the trilogy, The Detachment, is in the pipeline as we speak. It's a masterpiece. We hope to publish it late this year or early in 2016. Meanwhile, the next book in the Asphalt Warrior series, Pick Up at Union Station, launches on June 19th at the Tattered Cover in Denver. We are so pleased that you, like us, are huge Gary Reilly fans. He was an enormous talent. I love Mike, he's a good guy, but you got to follow up more than that. You got to ask, where the heck did you find out about Gary? Who are you? We want to know. We were trying to build friends out there and stuff like that. So I wrote her back with a much more nosy questions. What are you up to? What do you know? And I'm going to kind of condense some of this. And she wrote back, Mark, for many years I worked for a company, now closed and relocated, reviewing and selecting books for university libraries. Princeton University has a somewhat eclectic reading room, and when Asphalt Warrior came to my attention, I thought it fit their criteria for that collection. I sent it to them for their review, and they kept it. Princeton University. During my time there, I was able to send them the next 3 or 4 titles from that series. I made it my particular project to keep on top of the publication dates for his books and to order a couple of copies as soon as they became available. One for Princeton, one for me. I wanted to share this with you and to say that I think the very best thing I did as an academic selector bibliographer was to steer Gary's books into Princeton's library and have him counted as an established author in their collection. Holy cow. So we exchanged a few more emails and she wrote back a little bit more. She said, I read The Biography Man, which is Gary's short story. It's online. Gary published one short story in his lifetime. It was published by the Iowa Writers Review in 1978 and included in the 4th Pushcart Prize anthology in 1979. That's one of the best indie short story collections still going, Pushcart Prize. She says, I read The Biography Man a couple years ago and thoroughly enjoyed it. After starting with the Asphalt Warrior series, it has been interesting to see what Gary has done in other genres. He is one of my all-time favorite authors. Honest, completely unpretentious, and such a master of his craft that the reader experiences only apparently effortless prose without that annoying feeling that the writer is trying too hard. I love that sentence and that description of Gary's writing. So, I make a long story short, we pulled Karen into our Running Meter Press family and she helped edit the Detachment. She turned out to be a fabulous editor. She offered to do it for free, which is the way we kind of work. We try to do everything as much as we can with friends and volunteers, of which we've had many, and they've been tremendously supportive. And when she wrote back after reading the Detachment, here's what she said. She sent 17 pages of notes, by the way, proofreading notes, things to look at. Once again, Private Palmer proved to be such an endearing character. His weaknesses go hand in hand with his willingness to keep making the effort to be better. Notice the Murph connection echo from Booklist. There's a certain perceptive kind of sentimentality here that is very appealing. I love how he keeps his silverfish threads as a souvenir and wants to take a last lingering look at everything. He's had enough of military life, but those experiences still matter to him. It is psychologically refreshing to spend time with a self-aware character who neither minimizes nor exaggerates his flaws. He just quietly comes to terms with himself over time and undertakes his self-improvement privately and without fanfare. Even the most everyday incidents in the book are interesting because they are seen through the eyes of this character. Gary Reilly is so talented that way. He can compel your attention on every page of a 534-page book, and that is a real accomplishment. Of course, this book was different than any of his others for me because I had a job to do. But as I began wrapping things up, I had that familiar feeling that I would miss spending time with this character. So Karen Haverkamp, wherever you are, I know she's in Toronto now, thank you so much. You offered and gave so much to this. She spent months with the manuscript. Mike McClanahan, months with right here tonight, our good friend who has been a tremendous help all along the way. Mike also poured through it and sent us probably as many notes. And Mike Keefe then took those 2 sets of notes and had to reconcile them. There were some, not debates, but just some different points of view on how to approach things, military lingo. So he reconciled all those, and then we printed up a bunch of advance copies, just a slightly different cover with the advance copy button on there, and sent those out to many of Gary's brothers and sisters who read it very carefully, as did a few others, And again, the editing notes came back with more typos and more corrections, which is fantastic. I mean, you think you're going to get them all in 2 editing runs, you're probably not. It's a very, very hard task. So to all the Rileys who chimed in with emails, not too much, but enough to really just kind of give it a final cleanup push, thank you so much. It was a tremendous help, and we hope the final copy is in really good shape. And again, Mike took all those and did the final. And off it went to Nick, our good friend Nick Zellinger, who did the cover, using a photograph of Gary's and following along with sort of that same theme from the Enlisted Men's Club. And Nick did a great job there as well.